On the night my husband's empire burned to the ground, I was choosing between 2 shades of paint for the nursery mourning dove, or whispering cloud. To the outside world, I was Chloe Alderwood, the adoring 7 months pregnant wife of the millionaire tech mogul Jonathan Alderwood. Our life was a carefully curated masterpiece of wealth and happiness. But while I debated the color of my unborn child's future, I was also the silent architect of my husband's ruin. He thought my world had shrunk to baby showers and prenatal yoga. He had no idea I was about to expand it wide enough to swallow him his legacy and the woman he was sharing it with whole. He mistook my quietness for contentment, my nesting for submission. He never imagined that the woman he betrayed was about to become the reckoning he never saw coming. The scent of freshly cut lilies and lemon polish filled our minimalist mansion in Atherton, California. It was a scent I once associated with peace. Now it felt like the cloying perfume of a funeral parlor. Our life was beautiful, sterile, and meticulously arranged, much like the white orchids Jonathan insisted on having replaced every 3 days. Jonathan Alderwood wasn't just my husband. He was a phenomenon, a charismatic, self-made millionaire who had built his tech company Innovate Dynamics from a garage startup into a Silicon Valley titan. He was on the cover of magazines, a darling of the financial news networks. And I was his perfect accessory, the poised, elegant wife with a gentle smile and a burgeoning baby bump that signaled dynastic success. Our story had been a fairy tale. I was a junior financial analyst at a rival firm when we met. He was brilliant-driven and pursued me with a single-minded intensity that was both flattering and overwhelming. He loved that I understood his world of mergers and acquisitions, of hostile takeovers and market projections. "You have a killer instinct, Chloe," he'd once said, tracing the line of my jaw. "It's what I love about you." But after we married, he encouraged me to leave that world behind. "I want to take care of you," he'd murmured, his voice a velvet trap. "Let me build the empire. You build the home." And I, blinded by love and the promise of a family, had agreed. I traded my spreadsheets for swatches, my board meetings for charity luncheons. My killer instinct, as he called it, was put to sleep, or so he thought. The first cracks in our gilded cage were almost invisible. They started as small hairline fractures in the perfect facade of our marriage. There were the late nights, which were nothing new, but now they were punctuated by hushed phone calls he'd take on the balcony, the glass door sliding shut just enough to muffle his words. There were the business trips that came up with sudden urgency, leaving me alone in our cavernous house with only the ghost of his expensive cologne for company. "It's just this new product launch, sweetheart," he'd explain, his hands gently cupping my pregnant belly. "Project Nightingale. It's a monster. Once it's off the ground, I'm all yours. Ours." He was so convincing. He'd look into my eyes, his own, a warm, reassuring brown, and I'd feel foolish for my creeping unease. It was the hormones, I told myself. Pregnancy paranoia. Every wife of a successful man must feel this way. But the paranoia began to feel like intuition. A charge on our Amex statement for a restaurant called L'Étoile Filante. A ridiculously expensive, romantic hideaway I'd been begging to go to for years. When I asked him about it, he waved it off. "A client dinner, Chloe. Old Walter Henderson. You know how he loves those stuffy French places." But I knew for a fact that Walter Henderson had had a triple bypass 2 months prior, and his doctor had forbidden him from even looking at butter. Then came the scent, a perfume that wasn't mine. It was a faint exotic fragrance, something with notes of jasmine and sandalwood that clung to his suit jacket one evening when he came home late. I buried my face in his chest, inhaling deeply. "You smell different," I said, trying to sound casual. He stiffened just for a second before laughing it off. "Must be Diane, my new executive assistant. She practically bathes in the stuff. I'll have to tell HR it's a violation of company air quality." He was smooth, his excuses seamless. The true breaking point, the moment the hairline fractures spiderwebbed into a shattered pane of glass, came on a Tuesday afternoon. Jonathan was supposedly in a marathon meeting downtown. I was arranging a delivery of baby furniture when I passed his home office. He'd carelessly left his personal laptop open on the mahogany desk. Usually it was locked down tighter than Fort Knox. An email notification flashed on the screen, a confirmation from a boutique hotel in Napa Valley, the Vintner's Retreat. Booking confirmation for Mr. Jonathan Alderwood, King Suite with private vineyard balcony. 2 guests. This weekend. This weekend, he had told me, was a solo meditation retreat, a chance to unplug and de-stress before the baby arrived. I stared at the words, 2 guests. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. My hands trembled as I clicked on the email. It opened to reveal the full details, including a special request added to the booking. "Please have a bottle of Veuve Clicquot and 2 flutes waiting in the room upon arrival for a special celebration." The air left my lungs. The lilies in the hallway suddenly smelled rotten. The lemon polish seemed acidic, burning my nostrils. I sank into his leather chair, the cold material a shock against my skin. The room swam around me. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't hormones. It was the truth. The man I loved, the man whose child I was carrying, was living a lie. The killer instinct he had once admired in me began to stir from its long slumber. The analyst, the strategist, the woman who could spot a fatal flaw in a balance sheet from a mile away, was awake. And she was staring at the greatest, most painful, and most fraudulent transaction of her life. My marriage. In that moment, the tears I thought would come were absent. There was only a profound, chilling clarity. He wasn't just going to lose me. He was going to lose everything. Project Nightingale wasn't the only thing about to launch. So was Project Retribution. For 24 hours, I was a ghost in my own home. I moved through the lavishly decorated rooms, my hand resting on my swollen belly, a silent promise to the life inside me that I would protect us. I smiled when Jonathan came home, kissed him goodnight, and played the part of the blissfully unaware wife. But behind the placid mask, my mind was a whirlwind of calculations and cold, hard fury. The grief was a physical ache, a stone in my chest, but I packed it away in a locked compartment of my heart. Grief was a luxury I couldn't afford. Vengeance required focus. My first move was to call my best friend, Olivia Chen. We'd met during our MBA program at Stanford, 2 women determined to conquer the male-dominated world of high finance. While I had stepped back, Olivia had soared, becoming one of the most feared corporate litigators in San Francisco. "Chloe, you sound different," she said, her sharp voice cutting through the phone line. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I need a lawyer, Liv, not a friend. At least not right now." And I told her everything. The late nights, the suspicious credit card, charges, the perfume, and finally the damning email from the Vintner's Retreat. I spoke in a low, even tone, the emotion ruthlessly suppressed. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Olivia spoke, her voice was stripped of its usual briskness, replaced by a dangerous calm. Okay, Chloe. Listen to me very carefully. Do not confront him. Do not change your routine. Do not let him suspect anything. You are a sleeping tiger. Let him think you're still a house cat. What's the plan? I asked my own voice, a stranger's. The plan, Olivia said, is we don't just divorce him. We decimate him. Men like John don't build empires without skeletons. We're going to find them, and we're going to rattle them until the whole damn castle comes down. But first we need proof. Irrefutable, soul-crushing proof. That night I waited until the sound of Jonathan's deep, even breathing filled the master bedroom. Then I slipped out of bed. My first target was his home office, his sanctuary. Armed with a flash drive and the password I'd once seen him type in when he thought I wasn't looking. Nightingale 77. I accessed his personal laptop. The analyst in me took over. I wasn't a betrayed wife anymore. I was on a forensic accounting mission. I bypassed his personal files and went straight for the financial data. I created a mirror image of his hard drive, a process that took 3 agonizingly slow hours. Every minute I expected to hear his footsteps on the stairs. But he slept on, oblivious. Next, I delved into our shared finances, which I had long neglected. I logged into our accounts, my fingers flying across the keyboard, rediscovering a forgotten fluency. I found a hidden account, a slush fund masked as a holding company, Alderwood Ventures LLC. It was his personal piggy bank, and the transactions told a story of pure indulgence. There were thousands of dollars spent at high-end jewelers like Cartier and Van Cleef and Arpels for gifts I had never received. There were weekly charges at L'Etoile Filante, always for 2. There was a recurring monthly payment, a wire transfer, of $15,000 to a private condominium rental in a luxury high-rise overlooking the bay. The renter's name was listed as C. Riley. C. Riley. The name meant nothing to me, but it was a thread. I pulled on it. A quick search of Innovate Dynamics employee directory gave me a name, Cassandra Riley, a junior executive in the marketing department. Her profile picture showed a woman in her late 20s with sharp, ambitious eyes and a predatory smile. She was beautiful in a severe, angular way. I clicked through the company's internal social media page. There she was in photo after photo from company events, always lingering near the edge of the frame where Jonathan stood. In one picture from the last holiday party, her hand was resting on his lower back, a gesture of casual intimacy that screamed possession. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when I cross-referenced the dates of the jewelry purchases with Cassandra's Instagram profile. It was public. A week after a $20,000 charge at Cartier, she posted a selfie, a delicate diamond tennis bracelet sparkling on her wrist. The caption read, "Some girls get all the luck. #blessed. Hard work pays off." The audacity of it stole my breath. This wasn't just an affair. It was a parallel life, funded by our money, flaunted for the world to see if they only knew where to look. She wasn't just a mistress. She was an investment. I downloaded every photo, every transaction, every email. I compiled it all into a heavily encrypted file, a digital bomb of Jonathan's deceit. But Olivia was right. This was just the marital betrayal. To truly bring him down, I needed to dig into his business. And my gut, that long-dormant killer instinct, told me that the rot in his personal life was likely just a symptom of a much deeper disease within Innovate Dynamics. Project Nightingale, the venture he claimed was consuming all his time, was the place I needed to look. And I had a complete mirror image of his hard drive to start my search. The house cat was done sleeping. The tiger was ready to hunt. The days that followed were a masterclass in deception. I was the perfect, glowing, expectant mother. I discussed birth plans, feigned excitement over sonograms, and rubbed my belly with a serene smile whenever Jonathan was around. I was Meryl Streep, giving the performance of a lifetime. Meanwhile, every night after he fell into his self-satisfied sleep, I descended into the digital guts of his empire. My temporary headquarters was the guest room, a space I'd claimed for late-night pregnancy reading. In reality, it was my war room. I bought a new untraceable laptop paid for in cash and used a secure encrypted network. With the mirrored hard drive as my map, I began to explore the labyrinth of Innovate Dynamics. At first, everything seemed pristine. The company's public financials were impeccable, a testament to Jonathan's reputation as a business genius. But my training was in finding what wasn't there, the subtle anomalies that signal a cover-up. I started with Project Nightingale. On the surface, it was a revolutionary, new AI-driven logistics software poised to disrupt the global shipping industry. The investor reports, which I found in a password-protected folder, were filled with glowing projections and impressive-looking data. But when I dug into the raw data files, the numbers didn't add up. The performance metrics were inflated. The beta testing results were cherry-picked with hundreds of failed tests deleted from the logs. The core algorithm was buggy and unstable. Project Nightingale wasn't a game-changer. It was a carefully constructed mirage. Jonathan was selling a dream, and he was on the verge of closing a second round of funding, $200 million, based on fraudulent claims. This was more than just grounds for a lawsuit. This was criminal. This was wire fraud and securities fraud. It was the key. But I needed more. I needed a human element. Olivia had put me in touch with a private investigator, a former police detective named Frank Henderson. He was a quiet, unassuming man in his late 50s, with tired eyes that missed nothing. "Your husband is a creature of habit," Frank reported back after only a week of surveillance. "Leaves the office at 7 toward every Tuesday and Thursday. Doesn't go home. Goes to a condo at the Lumina. A Ms. Cassandra Riley meets him in the lobby. They don't come out until the morning." He provided me with a folder containing dozens of high-resolution photographs. Jonathan and Cassandra kissing passionately in the elevator, holding hands as they walked into the building. Her wearing his suit jacket over a silk chemise on the balcony, a glass of wine in her hand. Each photo was a clinical, brutal confirmation of what I already knew. Seeing it was different. It was a spear through the chest. I allowed myself exactly 5 minutes to feel the pain, to let the hot tears fall. Then I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and placed the photos into the growing evidence file. Emotion was a liability. My plan began to form a multi-pronged attack designed for maximum devastation. Phase 1 would be the marital implosion, a public humiliation so profound it would shatter his carefully crafted image. Phase 2 would be the corporate destruction, exposing the fraud at the heart of Innovate Dynamics, triggering investigations and wiping him out financially. To execute Phase 2, I needed someone on the inside. I couldn't risk hacking into the company's live servers. It would be too easily traced back to our home network. I needed an ally within the walls of Innovate Dynamics. Poring over the company's internal documents, I searched for signs of discontent. I found my target in the accounting department, David Peterson, the chief financial officer. David had been with the company for 15 years, a loyal by-the-book accountant from the old guard. In Jonathan's emails to the board, he praised David's diligence. But in his private emails, He called him a plodding dinosaur and terminally risk-averse. 3 months ago, Jonathan had created a new position, Chief Strategy Officer, and given it to a 28-year-old sycophant, effectively putting a ceiling on David's career. David Peterson was a man who had been marginalized and disrespected. He was a man with a grievance. Contacting him was the riskiest part of the plan. I bought a burner phone and a voice modulator. I created a new encrypted email address under a pseudonym Veritas7. I crafted my first message to his personal email address, a single cryptic line. Subject: Project Nightingale's flightless bird's body. The performance data for Q2 beta tests is a work of fiction. You know it. I know it. They are selling a lie, and you are the one whose signature will be on the fraudulent SEC filings. They will make you the fall guy. I attached one small, damning piece of evidence, a deleted log file I had recovered from the mirrored hard drive, showing a catastrophic failure in the algorithm that had been intentionally buried. I didn't ask for anything. I just planted the seed of fear and validation. For 2 days, there was silence. I began to think I had failed, that he had deleted the email or reported it. Then a reply came. From D. Peterson to Veritas7. Who is this? My heart pounded. I typed my reply. A shareholder who prefers profits to prison time. Jonathan is building a house of cards on your reputation. When it falls, he'll walk away. You'll be buried in the rubble. I want to prevent that, for both our sakes. It was a gamble, a calculated appeal to his pride, his fear, and his sense of self-preservation. I was no longer just the betrayed wife. I was becoming the architect of a corporate takedown, moving human chess pieces on a board of my own design. Jonathan thought he was the master of the universe. He had no idea a quiet, pregnant woman in his guest room was about to rewrite his destiny. The digital conversation with David Peterson was a delicate dance of mistrust and mutual interest. He was cautious, terrified of losing his job, his pension, his entire life's work. I was patient. I never pushed. I simply laid out the facts, feeding him pieces of information that only a true insider or someone with complete access to the CEO's private data could know. Veritas7. Check the capital expenditure reports for Nightingale hardware. They've been inflated by 30%. The excess is being funneled into an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, an account under the name Alderwood Ventures LLC. I sent him the account number. I knew this would be the tipping point. His own name was on the line, his signature rubber-stamping fraudulent reports. He was being made an unwitting accomplice to a federal crime. The reply when it came a day later was different. The fear was replaced by a cold, simmering anger. D. Peterson. He told me it was for discretionary R&D. The bastard. What do you want, Veritas7? I want you to start making your own copies. Everything. Internal audit reports, unredacted investor communications, the real beta test data. Use a secure flash drive. Do not access it on a company computer. The day will come when you will need it as an insurance policy. I will tell you when and how to use it. A silent partnership was forged in the encrypted ether. David Peterson, the plodding dinosaur, became my eyes and ears inside Innovate Dynamics. He began to feed me a steady stream of documents that painted a picture of corruption far deeper than I had imagined. Jonathan wasn't just faking data for one project. He was running the entire company like a Ponzi scheme. He was using new investor money to pay off old debts and fund his extravagant lifestyle, The company's core technology was failing. He was a magician, dazzling the world with illusions while picking their pockets. With the financial apocalypse now set in motion, I turned my attention to the more personal phase of my plan, the public humiliation. The perfect stage presented itself on Jonathan's calendar, the annual Innovate Dynamics Foundation Gala. It was the premier philanthropic event in Silicon Valley, a night where the tech elite gathered to congratulate themselves on their generosity. Jonathan was set to receive the Visionary of the Year award, and he had insisted that I, his heavily pregnant wife, give a short, heartfelt speech to introduce him. "Just a few words, Chloe," he'd said, kissing my forehead. "Tell them what a wonderful, supportive husband I am. It'll be perfect. Our family, our success, our charity. It's the ultimate picture of stability. The investors will love it." The irony was so thick, I could have choked on it. It was indeed the perfect opportunity. I began my preparations. I contacted the event planners, identifying myself as Mrs. Alderwood's assistant, and asked for the technical specifications of the audio-visual system. They sent over the details without a second thought. I then hired a freelance video editor through an anonymous online service, paying in cryptocurrency. I sent the editor Frank Henderson's surveillance photos, the screenshots of Cassandra's Instagram posts with the jewelry Jonathan had bought her, and select damning snippets from Jonathan's text messages, which I had recovered from his cloud backup. Messages like, "John, she's getting so emotional these days. The hormones are making her paranoid. Cassandra, poor you. Having to deal with a nesting whale. When are you going to leave her John soon, baby? After the Nightingale funding closes, we can't rock the boat until the money is in the bank. The family man image is crucial right now. The editor compiled it all into a slick, brutal 3-minute video montage set to the soaring, dramatic score of a classical piece Lacrimosa from Mozart's Requiem. It was a masterpiece of emotional devastation. The final piece of the plan was Olivia. "I need you to file for divorce, Liv," I told her over a burner phone. "But you cannot file it until the exact moment I walk on stage at the gala. I need every asset frozen simultaneously. When the bomb drops, I want him to have nowhere to run, no money to access, no power to leverage." Olivia's voice was filled with grim admiration. "Chloe, you are terrifying. I love it. Consider it done. We'll file an emergency petition with a restraining order citing infidelity and financial malfeasance. We'll attach the photos and the offshore account details as Exhibit A. By the time you're done with your speech, he'll be a pariah with a frozen fortune." The night of the gala arrived. I chose my dress with care, a stunning custom-made emerald green gown that accentuated my baby bump. It was the color of money and envy. As I stood before the mirror, Jonathan came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "You look breathtaking," he whispered, nuzzling my neck. "My perfect wife, my perfect family. Tonight is our night." I met his eyes in the mirror, my lips curling into a soft smile. "Yes, it is, darling," I said, my voice sweet as poison. "They'll be talking about this night for years to come." He beamed, completely oblivious. He thought he was the star of the show. He had no idea he was merely the guest of honor at his own execution. The curtain was about to rise on the final act. The ballroom at the Fairmont San Francisco was a sea of glittering jewels and tailored tuxedos. The air buzzed with the self-congratulatory hum of the tech world's most powerful players. I navigated the room on Jonathan's arm, a serene smile plastered on my face, accepting fawning compliments on my maternal glow. Jonathan was in his element, shaking hands, clapping backs, his laughter booming across the crystal chandeliers. He was a king in his court. Cassandra Riley was there, of course. She wore a slinky, blood-red dress that stood in stark contrast to my emerald green. She played her part well, keeping a professional distance, but I saw the way her eyes followed Jonathan, the possessive glint that flared whenever another woman spoke to him for too long. I caught her gaze once across the room. She gave me a dismissive, almost pitying little smile. The poor, pregnant, clueless wife. I returned it with a serene nod, a silent promise of the hell that was about to break loose. Dinner was a blur of bland salmon and endless speeches. Finally, the moment arrived. The master of ceremonies, a well-known tech journalist, took the stage. And now, to introduce our visionary of the year, a man who is not only changing the world with his innovation, but also building a beautiful family. Please welcome the heart of that family, the lovely Chloe Alderwood. A warm spotlight found me as I made my way to the stage. The applause polite and expectant. I moved with a deliberate, calm grace, my hand resting on my belly. Jonathan, seated at the head table, beamed at me, blowing a kiss. The large screen behind the podium displayed a static image, the Innovate Dynamics Foundation logo. I reached the podium and adjusted the microphone. I took a deep breath, my eyes sweeping across the sea of faces, investors, board members, rivals, journalists, all of them hanging on my next words. "Good evening," I began, my voice clear and steady. "They say that behind every great man is a great woman. But I've come to learn that sometimes beside a great man is a trail of deceit, corruption, and betrayal." A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Jonathan's smile faltered, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. "My husband, Jonathan Alderwood, is indeed a visionary," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "He has a vision for a life of luxury built on lies, a vision of a future with his mistress, funded by defrauding the very people in this room." On cue, as I said the word mistress, the logo on the screen behind me vanished. It was replaced by the first high-resolution photo from Frank Henderson, Jonathan and Cassandra locked in a passionate kiss in the elevator of her apartment building. The collective gasp was explosive. Jonathan shot to his feet, his face draining of all color. He looked from the screen to me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Cassandra, at a nearby table, looked like she had been turned to stone. "He called her his Project Nightingale," I said, my voice dripping with scorn. The video montage began to play. Photo after photo flashed across the screen. The secret dinners, the condominium balcony, the Cartier bracelet on Cassandra's wrist, next to a screenshot of our credit card statement. Then came the audio. It was a recording I had managed to capture with a micro recorder I'd hidden in his home office. It was Jonathan on the phone with Cassandra. Jonathan's voice, slick and condescending. "Just be patient. Chloe is getting the house in the divorce. It's the least I can do. It'll keep her quiet. She has no head for the real numbers anyway." The text messages appeared next, blown up to a massive size. "A nesting whale. After the funding closes." The room was in chaos. People were standing up their phones, out recording the beautiful, glorious carnage. Journalists were scrambling, their faces alight with the story of a lifetime. Jonathan was shouting something, but his words were drowned out by the lacrimosa swelling to its dramatic crescendo. I let the final image, a picture of Cassandra and Jonathan toasting with champagne on her balcony, linger on the screen for a full 10 seconds. Then I leaned back into the microphone, my voice cutting through the pandemonium. "As for the Visionary Award," I said, my eyes locking with Jonathan's horrified gaze, "I believe the SEC and the FBI will have one of their own to present to you. Congratulations, darling. You've finally made a legacy that will last a lifetime." I turned and walked off the stage, not looking back. I didn't need to. I could feel the heat of his world incinerating behind me. As I reached the exit, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Olivia. "It's done. He's officially served. Assets are frozen. Welcome to your new life, Chloe." I walked out of the ballroom, leaving the smouldering ruins of Jonathan Alderwood's life behind me, and took my first breath as a free woman. The night air had never smelled so sweet. The gala was merely the public execution. The financial annihilation began at dawn the next day. While the tech blogs and gossip sites were feasting on the salacious details of the gala of ruin, a far more devastating story was breaking in the financial press. A renowned investigative journalist at the Wall Street Journal, a woman I had anonymously fed information to, for weeks published a bombshell exposé titled "Innovate Dynamics, the Nightingale That Never Sang." The article was a meticulous takedown of Jonathan's empire, supported by a mountain of irrefutable evidence. David Peterson, my man on the inside, had delivered. The leaked documents laid bare the entire fraudulent enterprise, the doctored performance data, the inflated revenue projections, the secret offshore account in the Caymans used to siphon company funds. David Peterson was presented as the courageous whistleblower. His reputation secured, his complicity erased by his cooperation. He had saved himself just as I had promised. The market reaction was instantaneous and brutal. When the Nasdaq opened at 9:30 a.m., Innovate Dynamics stock, INVDA, plummeted. It dropped 60% in the first 10 minutes of trading, triggering an automatic halt. When it reopened, the sell-off continued, a frantic exodus of terrified investors. The company he had spent his life building was being eviscerated in a matter of hours. By 10:00 a.m., a fleet of black sedans descended upon the gleaming glass tower of the Innovate Dynamics headquarters. Federal agents clad in windbreakers, with FBI and SEC emblazoned on the back, swarmed the building. They carried boxes and warrants, their faces grim and impassive. Employees watched in stunned silence as Jonathan's office, the corner suite with the panoramic view, was sealed off and its contents seized. Jonathan, I later learned, had been holed up with a team of crisis managers and lawyers since the gala ended. But there was no managing this crisis. He was trying to move money to hide assets, but Olivia's emergency court order had been ruthlessly efficient. Every account, every stock option, every line of credit with his name on it was frozen solid. He was a king, trapped in a castle with no treasury. His arrest came just before noon. The press, tipped off by an anonymous source, was waiting. The man who had been on the cover of Forbes was paraded out of his office in handcuffs, his face a mask of disbelief and impotent rage. The visionary of the year was now just another perp in a crumpled suit, his legacy reduced to a mugshot. The fallout for Cassandra Riley was just as swift. She was fired immediately for unprofessional conduct and breach of corporate ethics. But her problems were just beginning. Her name was all over the transactions for the condo and the lavish gifts all paid for, with funds embezzled from the company. She was named as a person of interest in the federal investigation, a potential accomplice. The life of luxury she had been promised had evaporated, replaced by crippling legal fees and public shame. Her Instagram account was flooded with thousands of hateful comments, calling her a home wrecker and a gold digger. The life she had so proudly flaunted had become her prison. I watched the news reports from a quiet hotel room I'd booked under Olivia's name. I saw the stock ticker flatline. I saw the FBI agents carrying boxes of evidence. I saw Jonathan's face contorted in fury as he was pushed into the back of a federal vehicle. There was no triumph, no elation, just a profound, quiet sense of completion, a necessary, painful, and deeply satisfying rebalancing of the scales. The storm I had unleashed was raging, but I was in the eye of it, calm and untouched. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Chloe." His voice was a venomous rasp. He was calling from jail. "You did this. You ruined me." I held the phone to my ear, listening to the sound of his brokenness. I thought of the lies, the betrayal, the condescension. I thought of him calling me a nesting whale. I rested a hand on my belly, feeling the gentle kick of my child. "No, Jonathan," I said, my voice as cold and clear as ice. "You did this. You just thought no one was smart enough to notice. You underestimated me. You always did." I hung up before he could reply. I blocked the number. The final domino had fallen. His voice, his influence, his very presence in my life was now just static. It was over. 6 months later, I was sitting in a rocking chair on the porch of a charming, sun-drenched house in coastal Oregon. The air smelled of salt and pine, a clean, honest scent that was the antithesis of my old life. In my arms, a 2-month-old baby girl, Amelia, slept peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. My daughter. Our daughter. The legal battles had been messy but decisive. Jonathan Alderwood, facing overwhelming evidence, had taken a plea deal. He was sentenced to 12 years in a federal white-collar prison for securities fraud and embezzlement. Innovate Dynamics was bankrupt, its assets liquidated to pay a fraction of what was owed to its defrauded investors and creditors. His name was now a cautionary tale in business schools, a synonym for hubris and spectacular failure. Cassandra Riley had managed to avoid jail time by cooperating fully with the prosecution, testifying against Jonathan in excruciating detail. She was left with nothing but a mountain of debt and a reputation so toxic she would likely never work in the tech industry again. I heard she had moved back to her hometown in Ohio, a ghost of the ambitious woman she had tried to be. Thanks to Olivia's legal prowess, the divorce settlement had been swift. We had successfully argued that my share of the marital assets should be drawn from funds acquired before Jonathan's criminal activity began in earnest. I wasn't a millionaire, but I was comfortable. I had enough to buy this house to secure Amelia's future, and most importantly, to be free. The money wasn't a prize. It was a tool, the means to an end. The real victory was the peace. I looked down at Amelia's face, a perfect tiny blend of his features and mine. For a moment, I saw a flicker of him in the curve of her brow, and a cold knot tightened in my stomach. But then she smiled in her sleep, a purely innocent, milky smile, and the knot dissolved. She was not his legacy of deceit. She was my future of hope. She would be raised by a mother who was strong, resilient, and honest. She would know her own worth, and she would never, ever let anyone underestimate her. My phone buzzed on the small table beside me. It was a picture message from Olivia. It was a selfie of her and David Peterson clinking champagne glasses. The caption read, "To new beginnings." Peterson just made partner at the new firm that rose from INVD's ashes. He says to thank you. I smiled. It was a good ending for him. He had been a pawn in my game, but a deserving one. The sun began to set, painting the Pacific sky in brilliant strokes of orange and purple. Amelia stirred in my arms, her eyes fluttering open. They were my eyes. I held her close, breathing in her sweet baby scent. The gilded cage of my past felt like a distant, half-forgotten dream. The pain of the betrayal had faded, leaving not a scar, but a newfound strength. Jonathan had once admired my killer instinct, before trying to bury it under a mountain of expensive throw pillows and domesticity. He had forgotten that a tiger never truly loses its stripes, no matter how much you try to convince it that it's a house cat. He had forged his own destruction in the fires of his arrogance, and I had simply been the architect drawing the blueprint for his inevitable collapse. My revenge wasn't just about destroying him. It was about reclaiming myself. And as I sat there with my daughter in my arms and an endless ocean before me, I knew I had done just that. My future was no longer written in his shadow. It was a blank page, and for the first time in a long time, I was holding the pen. 5 years had passed. 5 years of quiet sunrises over the Pacific, of muddy boots by the back door, and of a peace so profound it had seeped into my very bones. Our little house in Oregon was no longer a refuge. It was simply home. Amelia was a whirlwind of joyous energy, a 5-year-old with my eyes and an insatiable curiosity about the world. Her questions were a constant stream. Why is the sand wet? Where does the sun sleep at night? Do starfish have parents? I answered them all, my heart swelling with a love that was fierce and absolute. We had built a world for ourselves, a world of tidal pools, garden patches, and bedtime stories, a world that had no room for ghosts. Then one crisp autumn afternoon, a ghost came knocking. It arrived in a sterile, official-looking envelope, forwarded from a P.O. box Olivia maintained for me. My name and old address were typed on the front, a relic from a life I no longer recognized. Inside was a letter not from him, but from a parole board attorney. Jonathan Alderwood, inmate number 73406-054, was eligible for his first parole hearing. He had served 5 years of his 12-year sentence. He had, the letter stated, been a model prisoner. He had taught business classes to other inmates. He had expressed deep remorse for his actions. As part of his application for conditional release, the board was seeking a statement from his victim. From me. I read the letter twice, a cold, unwelcome dread creeping up my spine. They didn't want me to object, necessarily. They simply wanted a statement on how his crimes had impacted my life. A neat little box to check in his rehabilitation file. He wanted me to be a part of his story again, a footnote in his chapter of redemption. That evening, after I'd tucked Amelia into bed, I called Olivia. I got a letter. I said, my voice quiet. I know. The parole board, she replied, her tone as sharp and practical as ever. I was waiting for you to call. What are you going to do? That's why I'm calling you. I admitted, pacing my small living room. A part of me wants to write a letter so scathing it ensures he rots in there for the full 12 years. Another part of me wants to just burn it. Let me give you some context before you decide, Olivia said, and I could hear the faint sound of her typing. I keep tabs on him, you know, for your protection. I steeled myself. How is he? Pathetic, she said, without a hint of sympathy. The Titan of Tech is now just inmate number 73406. He's aged 20 years, lost most of his hair, developed a paunch. His prison business classes are a joke. He's teaching con men how to write a business plan. The deep remorse is a performance for the parole board. The only thing he's sorry about is that he got caught. A bitter taste filled my mouth. And Cassandra. I asked the name, feeling foreign on my tongue. Fell off the face of the earth for a while. I heard a rumor last year she was working as a cashier in a supermarket back in Ohio. Changed her name. Someone recognized her and she quit the next day. She's a ghost, Chloe. Just like you wanted. I sank onto my sofa, the weight of the past pressing down on me. He wanted me to write about my life, about the impact of his actions. He wanted a story of a victim, a broken woman he could use as a stepping stone back to the world. "What should I do, Liv?" I whispered. The old you, the Chloe I helped plan the takedown, would bury him under a mountain of legal paperwork, Olivia said softly. But the you of today... Chloe, what does he mean to you now, honestly? I looked around my home, at the finger paintings taped to the fridge, at Amelia's little pink boots by the door, at the half-finished puzzle on the coffee table. I thought of his face once so handsome and commanding, now just a blurry memory. I thought of the pain he had caused, a searing agony that had since faded into a distant, dispassionate scar. What did he mean to me? The answer was startling in its clarity. Absolutely nothing. "He's a stranger," I said, my voice firm. "He's a name in a newspaper article I once read. He has no power here. His story is not my story anymore." In that moment, I knew what to do. I wasn't going to write a letter of rage. I wasn't going to offer a hollow statement of forgiveness. I was going to do the one thing he could never have comprehended. I was going to give him nothing. My silence would be my statement. My refusal to engage would be the final, definitive act of my victory. To write a letter, any letter, would be to admit that he still held a piece of my life in his hands. But he didn't. He was a ghost, and I refused to let him haunt my home. "I'm not writing anything," I told Olivia. "Let the board decide based on his crimes, not on my feelings. My life is my statement." A slow smile spread across Olivia's voice. "That's my girl," she said. "That is the ultimate power move. The best revenge is, and always has been, your complete and utter indifference." After we hung up, I walked over to the fireplace. I looked at the letter one last time, at his inmate number, at the sterile legal language. Then I tossed the envelope into the flames. I watched the paper curl, blacken, and turn to ash, disappearing forever. The next morning I took Amelia to the beach. She ran ahead of me, her laughter carried away by the wind as she chased the sandpipers. The sun was warm on my face, and the ocean stretched out before us, a vast expanse of possibility. He was a man in a cage, desperately trying to rewrite his ending. But I was here free, writing a brand new beginning every single day. And that was a revenge far more complete than I had ever planned. The years flowed by, like the coastal tides, each one washing away a little more of the past and leaving the present smoother, calmer. Before I knew it, Amelia was 16. She was a brilliant, sharp-witted young woman with a passion for debate and a fierce sense of justice that both thrilled and terrified me. Our life was defined by college tours, driving lessons and late-night talks over mugs of hot chocolate. The shadow of Jonathan Alderwood had long since faded, becoming nothing more than a historical footnote. Or so I thought. The past resurfaced on a rainy Tuesday evening. I walked into the living room to find Amelia sitting at the dining table, her laptop open, her expression unreadable. She was supposed to be working on a presentation for her advanced economics class. "Everything okay, honey?" I asked, setting a cup of tea down beside her. She didn't look up immediately. Her eyes were fixed on the screen. "I found him," she said, her voice quiet but steady. My blood ran cold. "Found who?" She finally turned to look at me, and in her gaze I saw not anger or confusion, but a startling, mature curiosity. Jonathan Alderwood, my father. On her screen was an archived article from the Wall Street Journal, the very same one that had shattered his empire. The headline, "Innovate Dynamics, the Nightingale That Never Sang," was there in bold type. Beside it was a photo of a younger Jonathan, arrogant and smiling in his prime, and a smaller, more recent picture of a grey, defeated-looking man being released from prison 2 years ago, having served 10 years of his sentence. I had always known this day would come. I had prepared for it, rehearsed speeches in my head. But now that it was here, all I could do was sit down opposite her, my heart a heavy stone in my chest. My project is on famous corporate collapses of the 21st century. Amelia explained, her tone more academic than emotional. His name came up. I read everything, Mom. The Fraud, the Gala, Cassandra Riley, all of it. She took a slow breath. The articles paint you as a victim, a scorned wife who got her revenge. But that's not the whole story, is it? I looked at my daughter, this person I had fought so hard to protect, and I saw not a child, but an equal. It was time for the truth. Not the tabloid version, but my version. I told her everything. I spoke not of a dramatic revenge plot, but of a fight for survival. I explained the fear, the chilling realization of the betrayal, and the cold, calculated decisions I had to make, not for vengeance, but for her. To ensure the child in my belly would be born into a world of honesty and security, not one built on lies and stolen money. He made choices that were going to hurt a lot of people, Amelia. I said, my voice even, including us. I made a choice to stop him. It wasn't about hate. It was about justice, and it was about protecting you before you were even born. I went to my old wooden chest and pulled out a small locked box. It contained the burner phone, the encrypted flash drive, and Frank Henderson's surveillance photos. I laid them on the table between us, not as trophies, but as artifacts of a war she needed to understand. Amelia picked up one of the photos of Jonathan and Cassandra, looking at it with a dispassionate, analytical eye. So that's her. She put it down. He chose this. He chose all of this over you. Over me. Yes, I said softly. She looked from the evidence of my old life to my face, and her expression softened. A slow, sad smile touched her lips. Wow, she whispered, a world of understanding in that single word. All this time I thought you were just my mom, the one who gardens and makes terrible pancakes. She shook her head in awe. You were a warrior. In that moment, any fear I had about the past poisoning her future vanished. She wasn't broken by the knowledge. She was empowered by it. The story of her father wasn't her tragedy. The story of her mother was her inspiration. Later that night, we stood on the porch watching the moon rise over the dark, churning ocean. Does it ever make you sad? Amelia asked, her shoulder bumping against mine. It used to, I admitted. But now I just see it as a necessary storm that cleared the way for all of this. I swept my hand towards the peaceful horizon, towards our home, towards her. He wasn't the great love of my life. He was the great lesson. And you, I said, turning to her, my voice thick with emotion. You are the great reward. Amelia smiled, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. In them, I saw the same fire, the same intelligence, the same killer instinct that Jonathan had once seen in me. But in her it was tempered with a deep well of compassion and integrity that he could never have understood. The past was a closed book, a story of a fallen king. But Amelia, she was the legacy. She was the future, and she was already writing a magnificent story of her own. And I knew with every fiber of my being, it would be a story of a queen. Chloe Alderwood's story, is a powerful reminder that the deepest betrayals can often awaken the deepest strengths. She transformed her pain not into bitter hatred, but into a meticulously crafted plan for justice. It's a story about a woman who was systematically underestimated and who used that very prejudice as her most powerful weapon. Her journey from a heart-broken wife to the architect of a dishonest man's downfall shows that resilience and intelligence are a force to be reckoned with. She didn't just get even. She got free, securing a peaceful future for herself and her child. If Chloe's story of resilience and righteous justice resonated with you, and if you believe in the power of fighting back against deceit, please show your support by hitting that like button. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their own strength. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more true-life stories of drama, revenge, and ultimate triumph. What did you think of Chloe's plan? Let us know in the comments below.